Hello. Welcome to another video tutorial on the Miraf SongBook program. In today's episode, we will look at how to attach audio tracks to your songs, how to work with audio tracks, such as speeding up, slowing down, or playing only a specific part of a song. We will also cover how to transpose audio tracks, and then we will focus on the MIDI player module, where we will demonstrate how to attach MIDI files to songs. So, let's get started. I have selected this song, and you can see that there is currently no audio or MIDI playback enabled, which is because we haven't attached any audio file to the song yet. I will go into song editing, open this song, and here I can insert a music track. I will choose this icon, select a song in MP3 format from the directory, and also select a MIDI track, for instance, this MIDI file, and then save. You can now see that it shows the options to play the music track or the MIDI file. I will save the database and return to the song settings again to show you more options. When you attach an audio track, you can specify its key because this allows the audio tracks to be transposed easily. For example, I can say that this audio track is in C major. And I can also set the tuning or tempo for the MIDI, but for now, I will leave it in the default state. If I want to play the music file, I just click on this icon, and playback starts. I can pause playback by pressing pause or click play and the song will start playing from the beginning. Alternatively, I can stop the song with this icon. This control can also be accessed through this tab, where you can find audio file playback and see the keyboard shortcut for it. In the Program and Shortcuts tab, you can find many keyboard shortcuts, which we'll discuss later, but you can find the specific shortcuts for controlling the audio player here, as well as MIDI commands that can be used to control the audio playback. For example, if you send MIDI commands to the program, you can control the playback of your audio tracks with a pedal board. This will be covered in the next tutorial. So, you have this playback option. If I expand the Effects Player tab, you will see additional parameters for playback. You can set the starting and ending points of the song, allowing you to practice only a certain section. For instance, I can choose to practice from 25 seconds to 40 seconds. When I play this section, it will loop continuously, returning to the beginning each time. This way, you can train on just a specific part of the song. You can adjust the start and end points with the plus and minus arrows, or click the 0 to reset the sliders to their default positions. Here, you can adjust the tempo of the song being played. For instance, during playback, I can change the tempo here. Clicking this icon will reset the tempo. You can also set a frequency pattern, which is a slight frequency shift. And the most important part is where you choose the transposition for the audio file. I have set the original transposition to C major in the editing settings. Therefore, when I play the file, it will be in the default key, but I can change the transposition in half-step increments during playback. You can see that I can adjust the transposition. Currently, my song is also set in C major, and the backing track is in C major as well. If I want to transpose the chords, the audio backing track will transpose simultaneously. Now, when I play the song and transpose, you will see that both the chords in the lyrics and the music backing track transpose together. This is very useful when you are trying to find a suitable key, experimenting with different scales, and can transpose both your chords and backing tracks simultaneously, which is a major advantage of this program. In this section, you see a slider that lets you set a specific point in the song, showing where the song is currently located. You can move it freely. You also have the option to save the final settings to a new file. I can set a new key, new speed, and more, and with this record button, I can save the specific audio file to the disk to avoid setting it up each time or use the recording in another program. Before saving, you can choose whether to save in WAV or MP3 format. For the MP3 format, you need to have the lame MP3 codec installed on your PC. It is sufficient to have the lame DLL library stored in the same location from which you run the program. In this section, you can see the status of the MP3 or audio file, along with the times. If I change the tempo of the song, you will see that the times adjust accordingly, as the song gets longer or shorter. This section also shows a spectral analyzer, which can be toggled on or off with this button. If you add the MP3 lame codec to the default path where the program is installed, you can choose to save the final file in MP3 format and adjust the bitrate for saving. This button resets the entire Windows settings, and you can also save these settings. You can configure all these parameters for each song, such as the saved tempo, transposition, and other settings, allowing each song to have its own configuration. As I mentioned, you can also transpose your songs and activate the module for practicing fingerings and scales. There is also an equalizer where you can adjust the treble, mid-range, bass, and playback volume. This equalizer can be toggled with this button, and you can reset it to the default settings. Additionally, you can add effects to each audio file, such as reverb, flanger, chorus, or compressor. And here, with this icon, you can set the parameters of the specific effect, as I mentioned, for reverb, compressor, and so on. This option lets you always revert to the original settings, and you also have the ability to save these parameters separately for each song. This gives you a lot of flexibility to customize and fine-tune each song according to your needs. Additionally, there is an option to automatically set the scale, meaning that if you transpose the scale, the audio backing track will be automatically transposed as well. You can also select the device on which the song will be played, set a delayed start for playing the audio backing track, and specify whether the song should loop continuously when it reaches the end. You can choose whether to play the song from your directory where the audio files are stored or from a directory designated for playbacks. Let's take a closer look. I'll close this window in the program, and we'll look directly at the structure of the installed program. Here is the MP3 directory, which is where the standard MP3 files are sourced from. You can add a file to the program either from any location on your disk, from the directory where your audio files are stored, from an external device, a flash drive, and so on, resulting in an absolute path setting. However, if you use an MP3 file directly from this MP3 directory, you have set a relative path, which is the preferred method because if you transfer the entire program to another computer, including this MP3 directory, the songs will still play even on a different device. Similarly, if you transfer everything to an Android device and include this MP3 directory, all songs will be playable. If you save your MP3 or audio backing track elsewhere on the disk, the program won't have access to it on another computer and won't be able to play it, so it's ideal to use relative paths instead of absolute paths. Returning here, you'll see another MP3 playback tab, which is currently empty, but if you take a file from this directory and look at its name, and then save the same file in the MP3 playback directory but with a different backing track, as long as it has the same name, the program will allow you to choose whether to play from the MP3 directory or the MP3 playback directory. The advantage is, for example, if you typically play your tracks from this directory but arrive at a concert and lack a drummer or bassist, you can select a different audio track that includes the bass and play from an entirely different file. You can prepare MP3 files in the MP3 directory and different versions in the MP3 playback directory, but the files must always have the same names. When you open the Miraf SongBook program and choose the settings here, you are indicating whether to play the song from your MP3 directory or the MP3 playback directory. As I mentioned, I recommend using relative paths here. If you check the settings, you'll see only the MP3 file name, indicating that it's a relative path, ensuring it works on all other devices. If you select an absolute path, it will work only on this specific computer. Additionally, this tool allows you to enable fade in or fade out and specify the duration in seconds. For example, if you turn on fade in and start the song, it will gradually increase in volume until it reaches full playback. This is useful if you want the song to start slowly. Further details are extracted from the audio file, such as MP3 tags. Now let's look at using the MIDI player. There are buttons for playback, and the MIDI player is started with this icon. Similarly, in the Control tab, you have options to start playback or trigger it. You'll also see keyboard shortcuts, and in the keyboard shortcut settings, you can choose those specific to MIDI playback. So, I'll open the player, and what do you see? Here, I can play, pause, and stop the MIDI song. In this section, you can see the currently playing channel, highlighted in red. You can adjust the channel volume and select which channel to play or set solo for a specific channel. The reset button returns settings to default. If you play back, you can turn certain channels on or off. It's a typical MIDI playback experience, similar to other programs. Now I click play and the playback starts. You can turn off or on individual channels or set solo. Here you can pause or replay or stop completely. Here we set the tempo and pitch. And here we set the volume of the MIDI track and the volume of the output itself. In this section, you have a slider to set the playback position, display time, and in this window, if the MIDI file contains any lyrics, they will dynamically appear like karaoke, or you can choose to display them statically. You can copy text from the MIDI file if included. This icon allows you to temporarily open a different MIDI file if you want to use it as a traditional MIDI player without the attached file. You can see the current file being played and the MIDI device used. Here, you can choose how MIDI files will be played using the GS or GM standard system. If you don't want to use a MIDI device, you can play through a sound font, allowing you to download a sound font from the internet, load it here, and switch to use your own MIDI sound bank instead of a MIDI device. You can also set whether the MIDI file should loop continuously and whether to use a delayed start. Finally, you can choose to enable or disable skipping exclusive messages that may be set in the MIDI file. Using this icon, you can open the settings for your audio card and MIDI settings, which we will demonstrate shortly. As I mentioned, you can store MIDI instructions in the MIDI file that you want to send. For example, if you add instructions to the MIDI file in a MIDI editor for switching your pedal boards or stage lights, these MIDI instructions will trigger at the exact moments during playback. We'll cover this in more detail in the next video tutorial, where we'll discuss sending MIDI instructions. Now, if I close the windows here and reopen the effects player, you can use it just like the MIDI player for playing any MP3 files. If you click this icon, you can open an audio file and play it without needing to attach it to a specific song. Next, we will switch to the Program tab and configure the audio card and MIDI device settings. This opens a configuration panel where you can choose which audio card to use for playback, select the default MIDI device for sending data, and specify the MIDI device to send MIDI files from your MIDI player. You can always reset these settings to apply the current configuration. There are also options for receiving and sending MIDI instructions, but we'll cover these in the next video tutorial. To conclude this video tutorial, let's look at the audio playlist in the Control tab. You can use the program, for example, to play your MP3 tracks, create a playlist, and organize the tracks. This feature can be useful if you want to use the program for playing ads during your performance or create a sequence of audio backdrops for theater shows, and so on. In this tool, you set up a list of audio tracks you want to play. You can rearrange, delete, and sort them here. You can also specify the directory from which they will be played, create new playlists, and save them. For instance, I can load the MP3 path again, refresh the songs, and see the tracks found in this directory. I can then add them to the playlist, such as moving song number 1 here, adding song number 3 next, and finishing with song number 5. Creating a custom playlist that I can save. Once saved, playing the playlist will follow the exact order I set up. You can create as many playlists as you want and edit them freely. If you need to remove a song, just double-click on it to delete it, and you can add a different one instead. Songs are added to the end of the list by default, but you can also insert a song at a specific position. You can create or delete playlists as needed. Now, let's demonstrate this. I'll start the first song. Then use this button to skip to the next one. These icons indicate that the song will automatically fade in at full volume and then fade out, so you can gradually introduce or fade out the audio tracks. Additionally, you can replace paths if you need to update the file locations in the playlist. This module can be used for playing music during breaks at concerts, arranging scenes in theater productions, or practicing several songs together. Thank you for watching and goodbye.